Greetings, and welcome once more to the Dracovin Empire. Are you ready to dive back in time and talk about some old games that probably may be able to play now, maybe not. It's a variety of stuff. Some still exist, some are dead. Yes, we're going back in time and learning about the history of CCGs, various products that were released, well, from the early starts of the CCGs, from the Magic the Gathering boom. And today, I've got an interesting one to talk to you about. Dixie, historical Civil War battle, American Civil War battle, CCG. It's as interesting and strange as it sounds just describing it there, but yeah, we'll learn all about it. But if you're ready to learn about it, my hand is outstretched. I am your host and guide here, Dracovin. I'm going to lead you through time, back into the early 90s, early to mid-90s to learn about this game, and teach you all. So, please do remember to give me a little bit of a tip here, like, subscribe, and the bell, and let me know if you've ever played this card game, or you'd be interested in trying it out. There's not a lot of it, but it is historical, and maybe not educational, maybe a little bit. Anyway, let's go through the portal, let's learn about it. Alright, well, where to start? Well, let's start with the basics of Dixie. It's out of print now. It doesn't mean you still can't purchase it. The original creator of it, Columbia Games, on their website, where I was able to find the rules PDF for free, does still sell some of the products. It's just the fact that they have leftover stock. Some of them are out of print, and some of them are out of stock, others still have it. It is a CCG. It's dice, and it's trading cards to basically have you fight the American Civil War battles. They were 3 battles that they did end up creating. The first full bull run, Shiloh, and Gettysburg. It originally came out in '94 by Columbia Games, and it's actually based on, they had a wooden block series of games, so miniatures types games. It's made for 2 players, 30-60 minutes to play, and yeah, you need a little bit of basic reading, a little bit of math, and some cards to play. And it does have some chances. Let's talk about who created this. Columbia Games, just a little bit. It is an older manufacturer of board game war games. One of the oldest ones, from 1970 when it was first founded. It's produced things like the Harn role-playing game, a lot of other card games, the collectible card games. Its war games were notable for using small wooden or plastic blocks instead of the more conventional cardboard counters. So that's where it comes the term of wooden block games. So, yes. They continued to produce things through the 90s, into the early 2000s, and even have had some products into the late 2000 teens. Haven't had a lot of work from them post-2019, but again, also another big thing about them is, with a lot of their war game-based things, they base a lot of stuff on actual wars. From French and Indian War, War of 1812, Napoleonic Wars, World War I, World War II, the American Civil War, the Crusades, the Battle of Alamo, War of Roses. You name it, and it kind of goes on. Roman Wars. Yeah. Basically, the idea that they are doing something based on the Civil War isn't outside of it, because they do a lot of very historical-based war games. You know, kind of thing, where they do basically set up from different times in history. And Dixie isn't the only card game that they made based on it. They do have another one, which we'll probably talk about in the future, because it comes out in a couple of years, and that's the one based on Napoleonic Wars, Eagles Waterloo. But for now, we're going to focus on Dixie, which is their first of these historical CCGs that came out. So as I said, it was originally released in '94. It went on for a little while where they made 3 main product lines that they produced. Again, based on the 3 different battles. The first battle Bull Run, Shiloh, and Gettysburg. After that, we don't see anything after it. It's assumed that it wasn't selling enough for them to continue their creation of stuff, and therefore, so, yep. Still, nonetheless, they do have a lot of products on their website, a lot of things that they've put out since then, and you can still check it out now. ColumbiaGames.com does exist. Probably try to remember to put that in the description below for anybody that wants to see it. And you can see what the cards look like for the Union and Confederate sides below me. Basically, one was blue, the other was gray. Let's talk about the basics that the game had. Again, showing off some of the cards here. So, cards are drawn depicting the uniforms of each unit that wore them in the actual battle. Special cards depict key terrain features, generals, scenario-rated special events, rallies, ammunition, morale. One player uses a deck for the Union Army, the other one has a deck for the Confederate States Army. There are 4 phases to each turn: morale, combat, move, reinforce. We'll go over all the details a little bit more, but that's kind of the basics. I'll talk about how to play the game, too. It had, like most collectible card games, some rarity. Unusually, rather than label powerful cards as rare and restrict their availability, all cards versions tagged as bronze, common, silver, uncommon, gold, rare. It didn't affect gameplay in any way. A deck of common cards was just playable as one stuff with rares. But it was a kind of competitiveness in the collectible nature outside the game. So it's sort of like, it's having the rare version of something, it's just bling. It's just bling. It doesn't affect gameplay at all. The cards are the cards. So, yeah, pretty simple that way. Let's talk about the products that we used. And of course, we'll start with the Bull Run one. This was the first Dixie set that was issued. It was sold as starter packs and boxes with 60 random cards, 30 from Union, 30 from Confederates. The cards represent each regiment, artillery battery, and general present in the battle. The set consisted of 200 cards total. Eventually, you were able to purchase entire things of it. They did sell the entire set eventually, so you can get all the cards. But if you wanted to get the more random starter boxes, those did exist. So you could get the full set, and that is something that is offered, at least for the on Columbia's site. The Bull Run full set's there. The Shiloh full set, we talked about it, and the Bull Run and Shiloh decks are still there. Gettysburg decks are sold out, and I do not see the full set on their site. So they do have some things sold out. Just to keep that in mind. So, these were random decks that were basically, would allow you to kind of play out of the box a game of it, and it would have been a combination of cards from the two armies. Again, 200 cards, complete sets, so you might go and get like more boxes to get more cards to kind of mix and match the abilities and stats and stuff that you have. Shiloh was the second set in the series. This was the largest one with 400 cards, rather than double the cards of the first set. It also had individual regiments with approximate uniforms worn in the battle. The art was by Eric Hotz. Again, sold similarly. We'll talk about some of the set, a little bit of details for the sets. But this was kind of like where we were going with the various products at this point, and basic information. Excuse me. Yeah. And again, it's just all about the Dixie system. It's in the Dixie series. And all the artwork and graphics for the entire series was created by Eric Hotz, an RPG historical artist. So keep that in mind. And the final of the product lines that was set out was the Gettysburg one. So the Gettysburg set was also sold in the decks of 60 cards. In this case, it was different numbers. It was 36 Union cards, 24 Confederate cards, with the full set having 250 cards. Gettysburg was made to be fought on a brigade scale with artillery at battalion level, so Gettysburg set had some additional rules to play. And again, each set was really made to be played as their own game in a lot of ways, and I didn't really find any details about mixing and matching a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean you probably couldn't, in a very generic sense, but yeah, they were really kind of designed to be on their own individually. Kind of. Just a thing to keep in mind when talking about this. Now, there were also multiple editions and a starter that were released eventually So there were more products that were kind of out there. I was unable to find a lot of details on them at this point in time. There are some sites you can find that have still copies of some things. But again, it's also one of those things, is there isn't a lot on places like Columbia's site. There are a lot of things left over. So me saying, oh hey, they did have this starter here, well, yeah, because I could find some basic information on it. But that was it. You know. And because some of the custom cards, there was first and second editions. So again, it's one of those ones that we have a little bit of the timeline, kind of, that they had multiple printings of some of these. I assume the multiple printings of multiple editions and stuff like that. But because it's just these three kind of things here, we don't see a lot of the overall product line and a lot of things and details. There are some other products we will talk about here before we end it. But now that you have an idea of products, the history of these products to a degree, again, it's one of those things is, even with some research, I wasn't able to find a perfect timeline of something, and I'm not spending, days and days researching this. This is, me getting as much information over the course of a week to teach you these things. There probably is more stuff out there on the timeline. But now you know the basic products, what you might be looking for, and some things like that. And the different sets, basically. Because there really was only those three sets, and then just finding products in those sets. Let's talk about the game itself. Rules, and the card here. As I said, I'm going to be using the combined Dixie rules that were for free download as long as you signed up to their site on the Columbia Games site. So you just have to make an account there, and you can get these rules for free. I'm going to go over some basics of them and how they work. We'll start by showing off the card here. Now, there's a bunch of things in here that kind of make sense, kind of don't make sense. What's more important here is where all these things are. It's the firepower, the combat value, the card number, the regiment. These are the big things that you need to know about. Like things like the state buckle, the order of battle, corpse. These are like details, but they aren't important to the battle. The big things that are important are combat value, firepower, and basically what type of card it is. In this case, it would be infantry that we're showing off here. So, the main types of cards were infantry, cavalry, artillery, generals, terrain, and special cards. They all have their own rules. Basically, infantry will have a blue border onto... So, again, US cards have blue backs. CAS cards have gray backs. So keep that in mind. Infantry will have a blue border, so it's blue on blue. Cavalry yellow, artillery red. Generals are rated for their leadership on their defense and attack. Terrain have each of their own symbol, but all terrain have special green borders. Basically, those are woods, creeks and ponds, hills, fields. Special cards, sharpshooters, fords, railways. The effects that have them are printed on those cards. So basically, they're like things that add extra rules, but are for that card. Card layout also varies by edition. This one here is for a Gettysburg card, which was the last one to do, so that's the one I'm using. So it's got a lot of extra Gettysburg-based information on here. Like the morale thing there, where it's a letter, that's something special for Gettysburg. But again, you know now, for any of the cards, combat value and firepower are your most important. Just keep that in mind. Those are the basics that we start with. Dice. There were actually Dixie brand dice, but you're required to have 4 regular dice. And these Dixie dice were available to order, and so you needed the cards and the dice, and now let's build a deck. The deck. So, the sides and separate cards, basically you determine who's doing what side. Who's USA, who's CSA. And you separate the cards of the deck. You shuffle your cards and deal your battle decks face down. Basically, the battle deck sides are by design meant to be vary by the editions. If you're playing Bull Run, you're playing 30 and 30. Shiloh, CSA has 30, USA has 40. Gettysburg, CSA has 24, USA has 30. Basically, any other cards are not used in the game and should be set aside face down, unexamined. You draw a muster of 18 cards from the battle deck. Except in Bull Run, where CSA musters 15 cards. Muster cards are deployed battle, and the remainder of your cards are on one side face down as your reinforcement deck. So, yes. You start with either 18, or in some cases 15 cards in hand of your total deck, and have some extra cards afterwards. Gotcha. Cool. Let's head to the battlefield, and the battlefield setup, and some of the rules here. So, here's the basic battlefield setup by an example of a setup here, where you deployed a number of cards in the various positions. You play in a flat surface, it represents the battlefield. Basically, it's two opposing battle lines with a center line in the middle. Each battle has a right, center, and left position for a total of 6 positions. Okay, we got it down. Stacking. A maximum of 4 cards may be deployed, stacked in each battle position. So as you can see, over there, on this one, the US has 4 in their center. Their center is maxed out in battle position. You do have a reserve, and the reserve has no stacking. Basically, Shiloh and Gettysburg, some generals have stacking bonuses, but we'll talk about that. And the exceptions to stacking are generals and special cards do not count towards stacking. So keep that in mind. But terrain and our 3 main fighting group, infantry, cavalry, artillery, do count towards stacking. Generals and special cards are revealed after setup and remain face up for the entire game. So if I would place a general down there or have a 5th card name area, it would be revealed and you'd know, like, oh, you're putting something special there. It's revealed after setup. And again, though, it'd have to be a special card that says it's played during setup of the battle and stuff like that. So yes, now that we know about stacking, now we talk about setting your cards down. You examine your muster cards, the 18/15 cards you drew, and deploy them in your chase. They are face down, with the exception of generals and special cards, in each of your 3 battle positions, obeying stacking rules. You may not deploy in enemy positions. Remaining muster cards are kept in your hand as a reserve. Again, exceptions for general and special cards, everything's played face down. So actually, I guess you would play the general face up. You're like, haha, I'm playing a general here. We're all ahead of them. And then Shiloh has its own rules. Not going to go into it. And up to 2 terrain cards may be deployed in each position, but they count against stacking. And terrain cards are playable after the game has begun. So, you don't have to necessarily play terrain in the setup, but you can. Let's talk about the victory in the game. To win, you must occupy unopposed any 2 of the 3 enemy positions. If not just enough to eliminate all cards in an enemy position, you must occupy that position with 1 infantry, cavalry, or artillery card. So it's like, yes, I can clear out an enemy position, I also have to have someone there. Shiloh has a little bit of a different victory, we won't talk about it there, but it does. Keep in mind, again, there are unified rules between all 3 of them. Some of the 3 have unique and individual rules to them. So talk about the basics of the turn you have. So, it's played on alternate battle turns. The CAS player has the first turn in all editions, and the following 4 steps are played in the exact order given, comprising your turn. So it's a 4-step turn. It does say in the rules, if you're a beginning player, they might consider your first game with all cards face up, just as a little of a bonus. So, 4 phases are your morale phase. You do morale rolls for cards that took damage, hits last turn. The combat phase, where you fire or engage cards. The move phase, where you make battle moves with anybody that hadn't fired. And the reinforced phase, where you draw new cards or cards from your reinforced deck and add it to your reserve, your hand. Let's talk about each of these steps in a little bit more detail, just so you understand them a little more. Talk about morale. So, this is one of the point in time, if a card you had took 1 or more hits during the previous enemy turn, you roll a d6, a morale roll, for each hit they took. So if they took 3 hits, you roll 3 dice. If you took 2 hits, you roll 2 dice, so on and so forth. Each morale roll is a number rolled that is equal to or less than the CV value, has no effect, and 1 hit marker is removed. So yes. So when I showed that example card, or we're showing here, this guy, the infantry guy, has a CV of 3, combat value of 3. That means on every dice that you roll a 3 or less, nothing happens. Any roll that exceeds 3 means the card is routed, eliminated from play. The morale rolls are modified by General's Trained special cards. They're bonuses, but always keep in mind, a natural 6 is always a rout, and a natural 1 is always a pass. So even if you could somehow boost someone's morale all the way up to 6, they still rout on a 6. It's always a lose. Gettysburg has a little bit of different rules for it, but we're not going to get again. We're not getting specific rules here. Combat! I did show this example of reserves in play and stuff, and showing how like people are fighting together, but I'll just kind of talk about some basics of combat. So, the infantry, cavalry, and artillery have a combat value. It's traditionally 1 to 4. To fire, you roll 1 die per CV. So if you have a combat value of 1, you roll 1 die. If you have 3, you roll 3. Certain low number rolls are hits according to the unit's firepower, which is dependent on the type and situation. So they will have a firepower rating of 1, 2, or 3. Firepower rating of 1, that means when you roll your low number, basically the hit number of firepower, it's a 1. So for a firepower of 1, you have to roll a 1 on that d6. Firepower of 2, 1 or 2. Firepower of 3, 1, 2, or 3. So gives you an idea about it, So combat value, number of dice you're rolling, firepower, what number you have to roll to hit something. That's an easy way of kind of understanding. So if you have a combat value of 2, firepower of 2, you get to roll 2 dice, and you're hoping to roll 1 or 2 on those 2 dice. Infantry traditionally have a firepower of 2, but cannot fire unless they are engaged. They must first make an engage move, and then fire on their next battle turn. Engaged would be this little thing here, where two sides of units are together in the same area. So basically, Union and Confederates are the same area, they're engaged in combat. Or they can fire at enemy cards that have them engaged too, for infantry. Cavalry have 1 firepower, and must be engaged to fire. They have movement advantages. Artillery have 2 firepower, 1 for long range, 1 for short range. The card rated F1, F3 have the F1 on long range, F3 on short range. Long range is firing across the center line at enemy cards in the opposing position. Artillery may not fire long range into an engaged enemy position, so basically they can't fire into an area that they have allies. And they can never fire long range if their own position is engaged. Artillery firing long range must be revealed to fire at any card they hit, as must any card they hit. So basically, again, it's flipping them over, revealing them to use them. Traditionally, I guess it's, you're doing that more to engage things. It's when you flip over stuff. Short range is for when you're actually fighting someone, engaging them. So it's one of them is, I can fire far. They can't be engaged. I can get some shots off, Like over here on the far side, you have 2 artillery on the left side of the CSA. They can be firing at the infantry on the right. The 2 artillery there. If they're not engaged, they can do long range. Horse artillery, which exists in Gettysburg, have a little bit of advantages that they can have a unique move and fire ability. But, just that's a unique card to Gettysburg we're not going to get into. For each hit, you place a marker on the troop card that you've shot. Basically, remember I talked about those tokens at the beginning of the turn for morale? You put one on there for each hit you take. And then, next morale phase for that person, find out if they rout, which they're removed from the game then, if you're routed. Let's talk about the movement. now. The other big thing here, our third turn. If you didn't fire, or if melee rules for melee, basically you didn't attack, you can make one battle move to an adjacent position. Legal moves are shown in the diagram here, except movement to the enemy reserve hand is prohibited. Basically, you can't attack the enemy area. If you would want to move from center to left, you'd have to go to reserve first and then move over there too. Lateral or diagonal movement between positions prohibited too. Yes. Cards move individually, one by one, in order. Stacking limits are ignored until all movement is complete. Keep that in mind. So, yes, you've got a little bit of time for that stacking. Remember I said about stacking, each position can have 4 of your cards. Remember we showed that picture where there was, a bunch of different people on both sides and one things? Because you obey stacking for each position personally. Engaging, of course, is removing a position that has an enemy card. Bam. You can engage with as many cards as position stacking limit. So basically, if a position has a stacking limit of 4, you can engage 4 cards in it. All engaged cards of both sides are revealed by turning them face up at the end of all movement. Movement from the reserves to a position containing enemy cards is also engaging. So if I had a card in my hand, I have to engage it from there. I can move things from my hand face down. Even if you lost one of your positions in the battle line, you can engage and try to retake it. So if my right is taken over, I can send things from my reserve into the right. Disengaging is moving an engaged card to an unengaged position, basically retreating it. They're restricted by movement limits and disorganization penalty that applies from overstacking does occur. We'll talk about that in a second. Some terrain types limit the number of enemy cards that can cross between the center and center line to engage or disengage in one battle turn. They don't apply when moving to or from the reserve, so keep that in mind. So if I have a terrain in my center that restricts movement into it, it doesn't stop me from moving things from my reserve into my center. But if I would disengage things back, or, someone would engage me, that restricts it. Alright, disorganization. If you overstack a position for whatever reason, all friendly cards in that position must take an immediate morale roll. Cards that fail the roll are not routed, but move to the reserve. If the position is still overstacked after these rolls, you may withdraw cards of your choice to your reserve until stacking is legal. So you get one check, see if anybody is forced to move to your reserve. If they don't, you can personally move them. Cavalry in general can make 2 consecutive battle moves in a turn, except they might not engage or disengage in the same turn. And you can force march. You can force march infantry and artillery to make 2 battle turns, which is the same rules as cavalry and generals apply, which you can't force march. They have to make a morale check, where they're aided by the general's attack rating, provided they're deployed, the marching cards. If you fail that morale check, you don't move. So, yes, you can at all. So basically, you have to declare your forced marching 2 squares, 2 movements. Like if I've got someone in the center and I need them in the left right away, I can force march them over in the left. But I have to make a morale check, and if I fail that, they can't move it over. Talk about reinforcements. We're getting some more stuff in there. Last phase in a battle turn, you basically add a card from your reinforcement stack to your reserve. They cannot be played until the move phase of your next turn, except if there are special cards that allow you to pay them at a specific time. The reinforce rate actually varies by edition, so keep that in mind. Certain editions might have additional card draw, depending on what you're playing. Let's talk about some of the special types of cards, and we'll start with terrain cards, with the woods here in Sully Woods. So, if you don't have a terrain there, you're in open terrain for your battle. A maximum of 2 terrain cards can be deployed in one position. Terrain cards count against stacking, so if you have 1 terrain, you have a maximum of 3 troops. Basically, instead of 4. They also restrict the number of troops that can attack. So if only 3 cards can defend, only 3 cards can engage. Some terrains have defined positions, left, right, front, center, center, back, things like that. Terrain cards can be played for reserve in the move phase. They must be played face up and only an unengaged position on your battle roll. And once they're played, they can't be moved. So it's like, I can play them from my reserve to position, as long as not engaged, as long as I don't have 2 maximum terrains also there, and I'm playing them face up right away. Several different terrain types exist. They give various bonuses, which apply to all cards attacking defending their positions. The common ones are woods, which reduce the CV morale of attacking by 1. And defending CV is normal. Hills increase the CV and morale of defending cards for long or short range attacks. Attackers are normal, so it's kind of the woods basically limits attackers, nothing to defenders. Hills increases defenders, normal to attackers. So if you have woods on a hill, attackers would be at -1, defenders would be at +1. It'd be pretty good. Fields increase the CV of all defending cards by 1 when they fire, not for morale. It does not apply to long-range artillery fire, and attackers are normal. Creeks and Pond have a movement limit of 1 or 2. This means you can only move 1 card to enter the position with a creek on a battle turn. It doesn't limit from reserves. When an enemy position is captured, the attacker becomes the defender of that position and receives all the terrain benefits. So whoever controls the terrain, therefore, has the bonuses of that terrain. So keep that in mind. Generals. So, generals don't count for stacking. They're always deployed face up. You can have a maximum of 1 general in any position. Generals can make 2 consecutive battle moves. Generals have a rating for attack and defense. The first number being attack, the second number being defense. So in this case, if you're 1-2, you have 1 on attack and 2 on defense. They don't fire like troop cards. They give moral support to all friendly troops located in the same position. The attack adds to attack rating to morale of all friendly cards in the position. So, +1 to attacking. Remember, attacking is the number of dice, the combat value is the number of dice they get. So basically, this guy's adding, roll 1 extra die. Firepower is still the same for whatever card it is. Defense adds the morale of friendly cards in the defending position. So in this case, you have +2 to your morale. That might make a difference between having to roll a, 3 or 4 instead of a 1 or a 2, depending on your CV. It makes it easier for you not to rout when you're getting hit by those attacks. So generals can take hits. They can be fired upon. They take a hit for each 6 rolled during firing at their position. Basically, they are not attacked directly, but every time I roll a 6 when attacking the enemy in the position that has a general, they take a hit. For each hit, roll a d6 during the morale phase, before all of the morale checks. They have a morale value of 6, so 1 to 5 passes. So yeah. Can you rout a general? Yes. Is it difficult to rout a general? Yes. Basically, I have to roll some 6s on my attacks to get some hits on the general. Not directly, remember I'm attacking someone else, but I'm adding some hits to him. And then he has to roll 6 to fail and leave. So yeah. There are some things that have stacking bonuses for Shiloh and Gettysburg. I'm not going to get into that, but they're stuff for stacking the generals. Let's talk about the special cards. This one here I'm showing off is the Rebel one, Rebel Yell. But these modify normal game rules. Effects printed on the card. They also can tell you when they're played. Some can say play in a morale phase. And unless they're specifically prohibited, this can be during your turn or an opponent's turn. They'll say play during any morale phase, means I can play on my morale phase, or I can play on opponent's morale phase. They're played from your reserve to any position, except when restricted to engage or unengaged positions. Some say that. Again, the card will tell you how it's restricted and where it goes. They have an immediate temporary effect and then are discarded. Some have long-term effects. Color Guard, Johnny Silent. And they're always played face up, and they take hits like general. So, hits must be divided between generals and specials. So keep that in mind too. If in an attack, 1 hit comes, it goes directly to one of them. If 2 hits come, you divide evenly between them. And, yeah. But no, again, if it's a more permanent one, treat it like a general. A maximum of 2 special cards can be played in the same position at the same time phase. So that's the entire thing. Position and time. But they have to be different cards. You cannot play 2 Rebel cards in the same melee, but you can play Bayonet Charge and Rebel Yell simultaneously. So, yes, position limits it, time limits it. But again, if you have enough time and position, like if I can play 6 cards on all 3 of my positions that are engaged in stuff now, I could, if they're 2 different to each other in each of those positions. Again, it's sort of like different combats have different bonuses. Combat phase special cards must be committed to play before dice are rolled, but you must give your opponent time to play before roll. So it's sort of like a thing of, if it's a combat turn and I'm playing something to affect me, great. So I say it. But you also may say, like, hey, do you want to play any special cards for my combat? Awesome. There are some more rules. There are a bunch of advanced rules. I'm not going to get into any of them today. Outflanking, melee, and field day. Just to name a couple of them. Decoys, scouting. And there are some rules for custom battle decks, using the battle points, basically, and depending on the way you play it there, depending on the number of columns, also, you can do things like Bull Run with 5 columns instead of a 5-position battle line, instead of a 3, and use more battle points. But again, you kind of are building together a set of cards, and the battle points also are values for a deck, too, rather than using more special things there. And there are multiple day battles, special historical notes, and kind of things like that stuff, too. So there's a lot of ways that we can enhance, fix up, increase things, and change things. More battle line positions, custom decks. All these different things exist in the bonus rules. I'm not diving into them today because I'm going over the basic rules of playing the game. But if you wanted to, again, rules are free online. You can get them. Check out the advanced rules. And if you want to play this game a bunch of times and try it out yourself, then yeah. And there are probably places you might be able to find it on things like Back to CCG, Tabletop Simulator, stuff like that. There probably are places beyond just purchasing them online, either used or, again, there is still some supply left with Columbia games, but it's really an out-of-print game, so it's take it or leave it at this point in time how you acquire it. But there you go, that's Dixie, in a nutshell. A very interesting game, because it is a tumultuous period in American history. As an American, it's the Civil War. It has some big, notes to it historically. But again, as with most war game-based groups and war-based things, historical battles are done a lot. Think of all the things that Columbia's done. Historical battles are no-brainer to them. That's what they've done in a lot of their war games. So coming together with a interesting basic baseline CCG that's historical and based upon real-world battles was kind of interesting. I think that's the big thing about this. It is interesting. It is unique, and it is just played for fun. Maybe you get a little bit of idea about history, have a little bit of fun. That might be you playing Dixie and trying it out. And I think the other big thing to say about this is, certainly speaking, it's relatively simple. A lot of details and ways that a lot of CCGs we know about today really aren't used now. Sure, there's rarity, but it's just for, playing. It just comes down to what cards are you using. You buy a deck that has a random selection of cards, and you play with it. Or eventually you use some of the basic rules for editing those decks and coming up with something new and different and putting together your own version of a deck with the cards you like, the generals you like, the special cards you like, and that sort of things. So, again, that's more of the advanced rules for customizing your deck, kind of putting things together. But keep that in mind and look into that if you are very interested in building and trying out Dixie. It's an interesting one. But I'll leave that for today. I think it was a fun one to dive into. I do like looking at the history of CCGs as we know them, because there are a lot of interesting CCGs that came about in these early days, since Magic. And, I'm mostly done 94. I think I'm mostly done 94. So you can check out all my other videos from '94. I'll keep going at least maybe till 2000, we'll say, in doing these videos. So I'll make sure to check out more. There might be one or two left over here. But yeah, we'll go through here. We'll go through more dates and talk about more of these times in the birth of the CCG, and kind of knowing some of these things still do exist today. Others don't. And I think that's also an interesting thing is Magic wasn't the only winner during this time, but it was the big winner. And certainly speaking, a lot of these didn't exist. I mean, 99 was Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's still a big one. Pokemon still exists. Some of the other ones still do exist. Just most don't. And talking about those interesting ones are kind of why I think I'm here doing this. Make sure to check me out. If you're listening to me live, you can always check me out over on the Twitch side of things. Or if you can't catch me live, check me out on YouTube. YouTube's where I upload all the tabletop-related stuff. But over on the Twitch side, I don't just do the tabletop stuff like this. I do some gaming, either personally or friends. Variety game, usually. I do some live plays of TTRPGs. Those go up on YouTube also. But Fall of Avonswell, Wednesdays at 8, the current one. Make sure to check that out. Working on getting it, up and running and all things right with it. Discussing Tabletop Saturdays at 6, we're talking about news of the week. That's another thing I can shout out and say thumbs up, go check that one out. Talk about news of the week, deeper discussions. Probably make a podcast at one point in time. Check out my social media links, Discord, Blue Sky, Twitter/X. Make sure to do those things to support the channel, like subscribing the bell. Let me know what you think about Dixie in the comments. Like, do you want to try this card game or not? Let me know. Anyway, until the next time, I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.